While most Men in Black stories revolve around witnesses being threatened to stay silent, there are some cases that seem to lack a purpose. Such is a case that occurred in May 1977. At 8:30 a.m., Mrs. Lillian Owens was in her kitchen at her home in Wavertree, Myerside, making breakfast. She suddenly felt the sense that she needed to turn around. When she did, she noticed that a man was standing in her doorway. She found this strange, as she had not heard the gate opening and closing, something that would have normally alerted her to the arrival of a visitor. She noted that this man wore what looked like brand new clothes, a small green check suit, white shirt, green tie. He had blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. Despite it being spring, she noted that his skin was deeply tanned. Before she could say anything, the man spoke, asking, "Have you got any trousers?" Mrs. Owens found this an odd question and replied, "No." She moved towards the door in an effort to shut it, but he placed his shiny black shoe, the kind with a steel-toe cap, in the door, blocking it from closing. Mrs. Owens, unsure of what to do, told the man that she was going to call for her son to come and personally usher him out. Interestingly, her son was not actually home at the time, but apparently her gamble paid off, as the man pulled his foot from the door and turned to leave. After shutting and locking the door, an effort that took mere seconds, she peered out the window of the door to see where he'd gone, but he was nowhere in sight. Mrs. Owens found this strange, and she opened the door and slowly looked around the house, but the man was gone. She could not understand how this was possible. There simply was not enough time for him to disappear from her view. Had he run in either direction or in front, she would have seen it. To her, it was as if he simply just vanished. Eager to discuss what she had seen, Mrs. Owens visited her neighbors and was surprised to hear that she wasn't the only one in the community to have seen this man. Another woman told her that she had been in her living room when this similarly dressed and looking man seemingly materialized behind her. Given that she had locked all the doors and windows, this neighbor had no idea how he had gotten into her house. The man asked her, "Can I have a drink of water?" Terrified, she ran to her phone and immediately went to dial up the police. When she turned to look at him, she noticed that he was no longer there. Like Mrs. Owens, she could not explain how he got out of her sight so quickly. Mrs. Owens was so frightened upon hearing this that she ended up leaving her home and staying with family for a few days. While most people might chalk this up to it being a sort of ghostly manifestation, it is what happened to Mrs. Owens a month later that suggests this strange visit might be linked to the UFO phenomena. Mrs. Owens claims that one night in July, a few weeks after his visit, she found herself being awoken at 2 a.m. by a bright light pouring in through her curtains. Unsure of what was going on, she slowly crawled out of bed and made her way to the window. When she pulled open the curtains, she was shocked to see a spherical object hovering outside her window. The object was round, with blue vertical lines on it. She noted that there would be a red flash of light periodically, which appeared on one side of the object. After hovering outside her window for a few minutes, the object slowly drifted away towards the east, where Mrs. Owens eventually lost sight of it. It wasn't until a few months later that Mrs. Owens connected the two events. Curiously, between May and July 1977, the UK experienced a huge uptick in UFO sightings and reported alien encounters. Mrs. Owens experienced no strange or paranormal phenomena either before these two events, nor did she experience anything afterwards. What was the purpose of the strange visitor? Had something else occurred that morning that Mrs. Owens was being blocked from consciously remembering? Does the arrival of the strange spherical object outside her window hint at a possible abduction previously in her life, or to come in the future? And was this strange man in the green suit, whose description very much matches a Nordic type of alien, there to possibly decipher what she recalled of the event, or maybe prepare her and them for a visitation that would transpire at a later date? I'm curious if her neighbor also had a UFO sighting in the months after the arrival of the strange man in her living room. July 1966, San Diego County, California. 5 witnesses returning to their parked vehicle were shocked to find it being ransacked. Not by a person, mind you, but a strange, hairy bipedal creature. They noticed a second hairy creature sitting nonchalantly on the side of the road, apparently watching his companion. Upon sighting the 5 people, the 2 strange creatures promptly scrambled off into the woods. The 5 witnesses hurried to the car and left the area. Further up the road, they talked themselves into going back. They assumed that the creatures were long gone by then, and they wanted to have another look at the area. As they drove by, the creature, the one they had observed ransacking the car, ran up to the side of their vehicle and tried to reach its hand inside the window. A little too close for comfort, the 5 witnesses quickly left the area. When skeptics attempted to explain the creatures away as bears, the witnesses were adamant that the creatures they saw were not bears. They neither looked like bears nor moved like bears. As well, they had hair, not fur. It was long, and it draped off their bodies. A user calling himself Renegade Times wrote to me about a sighting they had in northwest Indiana. My brother and his family lived in a more rural setting than myself. Oftentimes I would spend a Saturday evening with him and his family, relaxing under the many stars I never saw closer to the city. It was tranquil quiet, and the sky at night was lit up like fireworks with stars. One summer evening, as it was approaching 11 p.m. or so, we were talking, and out of nowhere, an enormous bird owl thing came off the roof of his 3-car garage and flew over us. As I looked up to the starlit sky, it was completely blacked out by this thing, and the sound of wings in the air could be heard. My sister-in-law ran into the house, but I strained to see what it was. It had an enormous wingspan. Its silhouette was just massive, maybe 7 feet or so across. I remember thinking that's too big for a bird, even an owl. My brother came out asking what all the fuss was, that his wife was yelling at him to go see. I explained what I saw, and he knows I'm not a fabricator. I say what I saw. He said, and I quote, "Hell of a time for me to go to the head, huh?" I missed it. So, to this day, when I'm out at night, I look up a whole lot more. This world has unexplained events everywhere.